Okay, now today I'm going to do another blended whiskey review for you, and that is the Woodsman blended Scotch whiskey, bottle of 40% ABV. Now this whiskey is relatively new on the stage. It came out at around, I think, in 2017, and it comes from WHYTE and MACKAY. WHYTE and MACKAY, of course, own Jura, Dalmore, and several other well-known whiskey brands, so you would, on the face of it, expect some of those malts to be actually in here, along with the grain and everything else that makes up. Now, I like WHYTE and MACKAY. I like WHYTE and MACKAY a lot. So, but the fact that this Scotch comes from WHYTE and MACKAY shouldn't influence you at all on what to expect from the taste, because I find this totally unlike WHYTE and MACKAY. And now that's not in a bad way. As I say, I like WHYTE and MACKAY, but I also like this stuff. It's pretty good. Now I say it comes in a lovely bottle. It's got the Woodsman motif on the front there, and it's not an expensive whiskey. And I would say this is comparable to something like Monkey Shoulder, and in fact I would prefer this to Monkey Shoulder. So let me just pour out a dram and give you some tasting notes here. Now on the nose, it kind of smells like a bakery. Bready notes. Some caramel maybe. So let's take it to the palate. Now, it's an incredible smooth whiskey, a mild, if you like, a mild whiskey, a gentle whiskey, but I'm getting some fruity appley type thing, and some small amount of spice. It's not quite WHYTE and MACKAY itself, I think, is a lot more spicier. WHYTE and MACKAY has something of a very faint smoky character. There's no smoke to this. Fruity, I would say. Apples, some cinnamon. It's not at all bad. It is incredibly smooth, incredibly mild. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this to open it up a bit. Just give the water the chance to do its thing for a moment. Now, as I say, it's a blended Scotch whiskey. It's not expensive. I think I paid about £25 for this bottle. It's a 70 cl bottle. Bottled at 40%. It's a nice, deep, rich caramel colouring, so I suspect that there are some colourings added. Of course, there's no age statement. But we know that it's at least the youngest whiskey used in this mix is at least 3 years old. It's going to be a mixture of various malts and grain whiskies, perhaps with the emphasis on malts, I think, particularly due to the smoothness of the dram. Let's see what the water's done here. Back to the nose. Again, I'm getting that fresh bread baked kind of aroma. Maybe a little honey now. The water really does improve that. It's opened it up. It flows over the tongue now, and the smoothness is heightened. There's an aftertaste which is not overpowering. It's not really lingering, but it's there, faint, fruity, kind of oaty almost taste in the back of my throat. It's a very good whiskey, and for the price, it's top marks. I mean, it's up there with the far more expensive blends. It's not as complex as some blends, but then you wouldn't expect that for the price. But it's a damn decent drink. I've been doing a little bit more on my book today, A Dark History of Whiskey. I seem to be devoting a lot more time to the project lately, but this is because I'm leading into the last quarter of the first draft, and I tidied up a chapter today which is called The Birth of Bourbon, and it looks at where bourbon came about, where did the tradition of aging in charred virgin white American oak charred barrels come from, and that's a can of worms. Elijah Craig is recognised as the father of bourbon, at least by some, and the distillery that creates the Elijah Craig brand is adamant that he was the first man to use charred oak barrels. And there are several stories of how this came about. One was that there was an accidental fire in the distillery which burned up a few of the barrels, and Craig discovered afterwards that the taste of the whiskey that was sitting in these burnt barrels was absolutely superb. But there's another story that he was using barrels that had previously been used to contain sugar, and scrubbing wouldn't get rid of the sugar residue, and so he set a flame inside the barrels. That's one story, but it's highly debated by whiskey historians of whether Elijah Craig actually deserves the title of father of bourbon, though it doesn't matter because as time has gone on he has indeed got that title. But another man who's also was also entitled to be called the father of bourbon was perhaps Jacob Spears, who founded the famous Peacock Distillery, and he placed a newspaper advert. Let me just get the book on here because I dates don't stick in my head the way they should. Yeah, he had a newspaper advert in 1821 in the Western Citizen newspaper, and this advert actually listed by name bourbon whiskey, and that this is recognised as being the first time that bourbon whiskey has ever appeared in print. So there is one school of thought that champion Spears as the father of bourbon, and another that champion Elijah Craig. It doesn't matter which of them first discovered how aging the whiskey in charred barrels created that distinctive bourbon taste that we're familiar to these days. It doesn't really matter because they're both nice legends, nice stories, and there is some evidence to suggest that both are true, but there's also likewise a lack of evidence as well to back up these claims. But it's interesting, you know, the section, the last sentence of this chapter, The Birth of Bourbon, reads, but I must stress this is in first draft form, and it will be tidied up a lot before it goes to the publisher, and then it'll go through the editing and the proofing stages, so it'll be tidied up even further. But at the moment it reads, today Kentucky remains the bourbon capital of the United States, with more than 95% of the bourbon in the country made there. And whether it was Craig or Spears who was the true father of bourbon, it matters not, because both had a part to play. And today, with the definition of what is and what isn't bourbon enshrined in federal law, these two men still cast a long shadow of the history of the drink. Let's raise a glass to Spears and Craig. The water really does improve this whiskey. It's interesting, but on the website, WHYTE and MACKAY, they recommend that you drink this drink as a mixer. That kind of always, whenever I see that on a whiskey advert, it's perfect for a mixer, it always sets off alarm bells in my mind, and I wonder what's it going to taste like neat, because I'm one of those curious people who, like, I won't try any of these. A lot of my friends drink the Jack Daniel's honey and the various iterations you've got of this flavoured whiskey, but I'm one of those weird people who like my whiskey to taste like whiskey, so I won't go anywhere near that. I do sometimes drink whiskey as a cocktail, particularly on a warm evening. It's nothing more refreshing than my favourite drink, and that's bourbon based. We've just been talking about bourbon, but that's bourbon based, and my favourite whiskey cocktail is a Kentucky Mule. So I do drink whiskey from time to time in a cocktail or as a mixer, and I will sometimes use Scotch in that fashion, although to be honest with you, I don't very often. I tend to drink Scotch. Not exactly neat, And we need to get away from the being so precious about our dram and saying that the only way to drink whiskey is neat, because it seems to me that for anyone wanting to spread whiskey appreciation, get more and more people interested in this wonderfully complex drink, a unique drink which doesn't taste like any other spirit out there, it seems daft to limit the way that you say people can drink it. You know, when you got these whiskey snobs who say the only way to drink your whiskey is straight, completely neat, no ice, no water, no nothing. I don't subscribe to that notion, and the way I drink my whiskey usually, when I'm sitting at home relaxing and having a whiskey, purely for the fact that I enjoy whiskey, I love the taste of whiskey, I love the texture, the feel of it in my mouth, I love the history of whiskey, and working on this book I'm becoming more and more interested in the history of whiskey, so I can appreciate all that, and I take my whiskey over ice. But for the purpose of the reviews, I do partake in a little whiskey entirely neat, and then I add a dash of water. And what I can say, to my opinion, is that every time I add a dash of water, far from lessening the impact, the sensations experienced from the whiskey, it actually heightens them, it actually improves them. And the water in this Woodsman has done a wonderful job. It's so incredibly smooth. I'm also getting a little aniseed now. So it's far from being a one-trick pony. It's quite a complex drink. I drank a couple of glasses yesterday evening while watching television with the wife, and I took them over ice. And I was immediately struck by how smooth the whiskey was. I didn't know what to expect from this. As I say, it's a relatively new whiskey, only founded in 2017. It comes from WHYTE and MACKAY, so that's a plus for me, because I do like WHYTE and MACKAY. I think WHYTE and MACKAY blended whiskey is one of the best blends on the market. Now, the guy responsible for blending the WHYTE and MACKAY is the flamboyant, outrageous, wonderful Richard the Nose Patterson. So I'm hoping that Richard Nose has had something in something to do in the creation of the Woodsman. It's certainly a fine drink. It's certainly quality. So yeah, that's the Woodsman blended Scotch whiskey. Top marks from this retrobate. Cheers.